Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, so love your enthusiasm yesterday. Love the stuff you're putting out there. Love the fact that we all get a 3-day weekend break, which is going to be great. All right, so but let's go ahead and get into it a little bit, and we're going to discuss. Oh, excuse me, yarp. Okay, sorry. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off in class. Now, some of y'all in like my B period, maybe my G period, are like, Mr. Terry, we got past this already. Well, my C period, I think we left off right about here, right? So we were talking about the gigantic effects of the period of exploration, right? We were discussing, particularly, we were getting into the effects of the Columbian Exchange. We're discussing population growth. We're discussing how the natives got kind of the short end of the stick because they ended up getting diseases and livestock, which is great livestock, hooray, but like receiving smallpox, measles, and influenza is not something you necessarily want to get, right? So, and then also we discussed the growing consumer market, right? We kind of are moving past subsistence economics and things like that, which is something we heavily explain in my honors class a lot more, but this is still very, very important. And you have to also understand that more money is now beginning to circulate through increased trade and the exchange of goods, right? Now, the positive effect of this increase of money was the price revolution, which brought in the laws of supply and demand, and which also brought in the concept of fluctuating markets and prices for consumer goods depending on how scarce they are, right? This is the law of scarcity in economics. Now, though there can be negatives of this as well. This is where we left off. Inflation is one of those negatives, right? For example, okay, write this down really quick. Example, Spain, all right? For example, Spain grew too wealthy far too fast. And by the mid-1600s, their economy ends up tanking completely due to inflation. John Green, on a lot of his crash course videos, always discusses how inflation is like one of the most underrated causes of the fall of empires and the fall of civilizations. And I agree with him, right? Maybe we'll write a book together, all right? So John Green, if you happen to cross over by this, just let me know, all right? So, but the big thing, though, is that inflation is a rise in prices due to an excess or surplus amount of money being available in a certain economy, right? And this particularly happened to Spain in the mid-1600s under the reign of Philip II due to the fact that there was an increased amount and an excessive amount of gold bullion and silver bullion that was flooding into the Spanish ports, right? And due to this, that is going to devalue hard labor. It's going to increase the amount of wealthy citizens, and they are also going to begin to buy certain goods outside of Spain, French goods, things like that, and it's going to end up completely inflating their prices and destroying their economy, right? And it kind of is a big reason why Spain is not some of the powers that you tend to hear of during World War I and World War II as well, right? So also very important is capitalism is going to be born during the 1600s. Capitalism has no firm birth date, but we all know that today, during these times that we live in, the disputes between the positives and the negatives of capitalism, and as well as its positive and negatives when we're looking at socialism or communism or fascism or any of the isms, it's important to know that out of all of them, capitalism came first, right? Capitalism is going to emerge during the 1600s, following the creation of the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, and all these different organizations, right? And businesses in capitalist systems are owned privately, right? So the East India Company, either Dutch or English, is the most important example of a capitalist system on the rise, okay? Businesses are now going to be owned privately. They're not going to be owned by governments, right? When we were doing subsistence-style economics, when we were talking about feudalism and the like during the Middle Ages, that is more of a government-run, founded, or enforced system of lordship and manors and knights and serfs. Now, businesses are going to be owned privately. And the people who own those businesses are known as entrepreneurs, right? They are going to invest their money, take a risk up front, start a company in the hopes of making a profit, right? We discussed this when we said that the best thing about capitalism is its drive to innovate, right? Innovations and like technologies and the growth of accessibility to workable living and a way to replace certain labor jobs is a very, very big reason why capitalist systems thrive. Now, the worst part about capitalist system is it does tend to create a very poor working class, right? So, but we will discuss that later on when we get to the Industrial Revolution and things like that, and the Industrious Revolution. Now, hold on one second. So, anyway, sorry about that. Some text coming in through my phone. Now, the biggest thing, though, is moving forward, we're now going to see a break, okay? We're going to actually need to take like a very, very strict break, and we're going to have to look at the fact that we are now changing gears completely, okay? So what I need you to do is, you can put this in your notes, or you need to start a brand new fresh piece of paper, or you need to start something else, because the big thing that in our Western Civ classes we do is we take the exploration unit and this thing and we combine them together. Rather than trying to make you focus on all of these names that are going to be coming up in the next unit, we like to try and take that burden off of you a little bit. Now, big thing, though, is we are moving into a completely new trend, right? We are no longer talking excessively about exploration. No more Columbus, no more Pizarro, no more Cortez, no more any of that stuff. We are going to live with the effects of their biggest discoveries and things like that, but we're now moving towards a different theme. So what I need you to do is flip to a brand new piece of paper, and the scientific revolution is now what we're going to be discussing, okay? Now, the scientific revolution is probably one of the most important things that we will discuss in this class, okay? Now, a lot of history teachers do not believe that theory. A lot of history teachers are always like, well, it's not that important. It's just going to change the way that people perceive the universe and things like that. I disagree. I think the scientific revolution is the marquee moment showing us the growth of the mind following the Renaissance. I believe that the scientific revolution is going to dynamically change the way the human brain views the things around them. I think it's going to change the way that people interpret the different concepts of stars, moons, the way that these different ideas work, operate, and function. And it's going to be a major after effect of the Renaissance, and it's going to be happening during the major height of the exploration period, right? So as these new goods are coming in and things like that, just to give you a heads up, this scientific revolution begins. So let's put 2 dates in your notes just to start off with, okay? So Cortez is going to go after the Aztec, I believe, in 1516. Let me double check that really, really quick. Cortez conquers the Aztec. I think it's 1516. Oh, 1519, okay? So 1519 is going to be the year that Cortez takes over the Aztecs. As of 1543, that is the year that the scientific revolution begins. So if you actually can see that really quick, we're talking about a very small window of about 24 years where now we know that there are 2 new continents out there. Now we know that the world that we thought we believed in is going to be wildly different. But the craziest part about it is we were discovering all these new goods, and there's potatoes and corn and all this new stuff coming in from the new world. But where do you think the scientific revolution truly began? It actually started out with looking at the stars, right? It started with actually looking up into the night sky and trying to understand not what else is out there on our planet. The scientific revolution truly began with trying to figure out what is out there, right? What is out there? And I don't know if you understand this enough, but I love science so much. If I taught any other subject, I would teach science, okay? And you have to understand the biggest part about it. This is a title. I will let you know when there are titles, but this is a title. The biggest place that it starts is changing the view of the universe. I am both fascinated and terrified of space, right? The fact that literally it is ever expanding, that it could potentially revert, that there is a moment, a bang that actually created all of these things, that there is just these concepts of never-endingness and nothingness and everythingness all at the same time. The infinite exists outside of our planet, and the fact that other people are not fascinated by it blows my mind. If I had you in a spacesuit and I just went whoop and I just pushed you, you would then just continue to go because there's no friction in space. Now, it blows my mind. You know why it's called space? It's called space, just like this presentation right here, because it's nothingness, right? It's literally the space between atoms. It is the lack of matter. That is terrifying in a way when you think about it, and awesome all at the same time. I mean, and you can use, different ideas about the universe to explain anything, like physics. The reason why this football, does what it does, it just hit my computer, and I'm so glad that it didn't knock it over. Does what it does because of physics! If one of you, when one of y'all walk into my room, I'm just going to slap your books out of your hand and go, physics, and just yell it, because I just love science so much. And all of it truly started in the 1500s, and it's going to dynamically change the way that Europeans view the world, the universe, and even the material ideas of a day-to-day life, okay? So the changing views of the universe are going to truly get started off way before Europeans ever even started to grapple with them. So the earliest views were based on philosophers like Aristotle and Ptolemy, right? And they believed in a concept called a geocentric orbit, okay? Now, to give you a heads up, Aristotle, Ptolemy, Aristotle particularly, Aristotle is one of our ancient Greek philosophers we discussed from classical Greece and Hellenistic Greece, right? Now, he's going to exist and be the tutor of Alexander. His major activity is going to be in the 4th century BC, right? So 400 years before Christ was born. So Aristotle believed in empirical learning, and he thought by looking up into the night sky, I could try my best to figure out what's truly going on out there, right? I can try my best to understand what is happening outside of this space. And since he didn't have a telescope, or since he didn't have the certain tools to view and chart the stars in a very scientific way, he believed that the Earth was stationary because he couldn't feel it moving. And he believed that everything in the universe went around us, right? So he believed that we were a geocentric model. Ptolemy is going to also enforce this as well. Ptolemy is going to add his own views of this. And he's going to say, oh, well, the planets take a certain path orbit all the way around us, and they do all these different things. And also, we're actually set inside of spheres. And Ptolemy is actually pictured in the School of Athens. I can pull that up real fast. It's all good. The School of Athens. Remember when we looked at this from the Renaissance period, right? Ptolemy is actually pictured inside of this image, right? He is actually inside of this painting. And he is over in the right corner showing a sphere. There he is. A sphere of stars right here to Raphael and a couple of other learners, right? So he tried to grapple with where we are in the universe. But all of these natural philosophers is what they're referred to as, or these earliest philosophers, are known for being proponents of a geocentric orbit model. And what a geocentric orbit is where the Earth is stationary and the moon and the other planets go around it, right? Now, we know now that that's not true. All right, so we know now that that's not true, and even a basic, child in elementary school knows that that's not true. Now, it's actually really interesting when you think about it, because Aristotle at the time was considered the smartest man in the world, but literally our 5th graders actually know this, and he didn't. Now, we don't blame him. He didn't have tools to look. But still, geocentric orbits are very important to understand that the sun is going around the Earth, okay? So a geocentric orbit is that pattern, right? And it is the outdated, outmodeled, old-school thought about it, right? Because they were like, oh, the stars are stationary, da-da-da-da-da. And another thing I want you to write down really quick is call it the heavens, or heavenly bodies, all right? So a big thing you have to understand is that Aristotle, Ptolemy, and other thinkers like them also believed that the things inside or outside of Earth were perfect spheres, right? That the other planets were perfect spheres, that they were perfect celestial bodies that were unchanging and unchanging and perfect things, and that is where the next life begins, right? The heavens, hence why we sometimes refer to as heaven being in the sky, is because of an enduring idea that that is where it begins, and heavenly bodies exist outside of the planet Earth, right? Now, going forward, though, the Catholic Church is then going to adopt, during the Middle Ages, this concept of thinking and learning. And do we blame them? No. Something you got to understand really fast is that a lot of times when teachers teach this, they kind of poke fun at the Catholic Church due to the fact that they're always saying, oh, well, the Catholic Church stood directly in the way of scientific progress. That's half true and it's half false, okay? It's half true when we look at certain things that happened, but it's also kind of half false if you look at some of the church leaders, because they were actually large proponents of it. For example, Mr. Mathern would love for you to know this. The Big Bang Theory at the beginning of the start of the universe was actually theorized by a Catholic priest, I believe in the 1800s, okay? But we're not in the 1800s yet. We're in the Middle Ages now. So the Middle Ages view of the universe was one that was sponsored by the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church believed that, that the Earth was also still stationary. So even the church during the Middle Ages believed in a geocentric orbit concept. They actually have drawings from medieval textbooks that show angels pushing the planets around Earth. So as you can see, they still endured with this concept. So they believed that in the Bible it said also that the Earth was a surface, that there's a Bible passage that talk about a glass dome being over top of it, and things like that. But the biggest thing you need to know is that they did believe in a stationary geocentric Earth model. And it's not until this guy shows up, Nicholas Copernicus, where anyone theorizes anything differently, okay? Nicholas Copernicus, who looks exactly like Lord Farquaad from Shrek, and I'm not kidding. Look at this dude. So his name is Nicholas. Oh, wait. No, Nicholas Copernicus. All right, so Nicholas Copernicus. Nicholas Copernicus is going to be the first person that actually theorizes the concepts of a heliocentric universe. Look at this dude. Looks just like Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Don't lie to me. You know he does. I guarantee you there's like Lord... Okay, look. Watch. Nicholas Copernicus and Lord Farquaad. All right, so there they are. These two dudes look exactly alike, and it creeps me out. All right, so I really think somebody, whenever they were drawing him, they were like, what should we make Lord Farquaad and Shrek look like? How about Copernicus? Now, Copernicus is really important, mainly due to the fact that he writes a very influential book. And a very important part of that book proposes the concept of the heliocentric universe. And his book is oftentimes referred to as De Rev, all right? So jot this down. In 1543, he issues a book known as De Rev, right? And that book exonerates or has the idea of a... There we go. All right, so they're going to propose this heliocentric universe, right? So 1543, De Rev, spelled D-E-R-E-V. Now, it's actually much longer, and it's in Latin. It's De Revolutions on something, but in English it means on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. And it advocates for this concept, a heliocentric universe, which is the concept that the Earth revolves around the sun, okay? Now, we know that this is correct, all right? We know that a heliocentric universe is the current model that has been proven. But as of 1543, fun fact, Nicholas Copernicus actually issued this book and had it published moments before his death. Now, historians sometimes argue that they're like, oh, well, it's because, you know, like he didn't want to be persecuted by the church. And then other people are like, oh, well, it's just because he was working on it still. And like, there's a lot of feuding ideas about why he waited so long and why he published it on his deathbed. But the biggest thing about it is you got to know is that these theories, is there what it's going to be called? His theory of a heliocentric universe is going to be widely rejected. All right. So even though a very phenomenal Polish scientist by Nicholas Copernicus issues these concepts and tries to prove these things, one of the biggest reasons why people don't agree with him is because of a concept called retrograde motion, okay? Now, we're going to discuss retrograde motion and other things as such when you come to class on next week, okay? And we're going to discuss all this stuff, and however far we get is what's going to be on your test, okay? Got it? So I'll discuss that stuff with y'all next week. I'll see you guys soon. Y'all have a good one. But the biggest thing you got to understand is we're now dipping our toes in the scientific revolution, and we're learning how everyone's perception of the universe and the things, the way they work, are going to change dramatically, okay? So y'all have a good one. I'll talk to y'all soon.